Have you ever noticed how life seems to test you the hardest just when you're trying your best to live with kindness and integrity? As if the universe itself is quietly asking, "Are you sure you want to walk this path?" In our last video, we explored the painful weight of being misunderstood, how even the gentlest hearts can become targets of judgment and suspicion. And yet, through the story of Wei, we discovered that misunderstanding isn't a punishment. It's a sacred test, a mirror reflecting the attachments we quietly carry within. But dear one, that was only the first step. Tonight, we continue our sacred journey through the deeper trials faced by good, tender-hearted souls. And the next test is even more subtle, more hidden, and perhaps one you've quietly carried without even realizing. So find your quiet space, settle into stillness, and let's gently uncover the next spiritual lesson awaiting you. In our last reflection, we explored the quiet power of letting go, releasing the exhausting need to be understood, defended, or validated. And as you begin to loosen your grip on that burden, something beautiful happens. Consider for a moment how much of your precious energy you've spent in your life defending, explaining, and proving yourself to others. All of that effort, that invisible labor of the heart, can now be released, and in its place, that same energy can flow back into simply being who you truly are, kind, generous, authentic, whether anyone notices it or not. But here's the part of Wei's story that many overlook. By refusing to defend himself, by embracing misunderstanding with grace, Wei did more than preserve his dignity. He quietly planted seeds of truth in every heart present that day. At the time, those villagers, clouded by fear and jealousy, could not see it, but years later, as seasons passed and memories softened, people began to recall Wei's extraordinary response. And in those quiet recollections, they started to question their own assumptions. His unshaken gratitude in the face of betrayal was so rare, so unlike ordinary human nature, that it lingered in their minds, not as guilt, but as something quietly sacred. It haunted them in the best possible way. Some would come to realize they had witnessed something holy, something beyond the grasp of words. And for the rest of their lives, they would search for that same inner freedom, hoping one day to taste it for themselves. This, dear one, is the hidden, sacred power of passing the first spiritual test. When you stop needing to be understood, you become quietly magnetic to those who are ready for truth. When you release the burden of managing how others see you, you rise above the world where opinions matter. You become like the morning mist in the mountains, impossible to hold, yet gently touching everything you pass. Take a slow, deep breath now. Feel your body settling more fully into this moment. Imagine yourself carrying Wei's secret with you into tomorrow, the deep knowing that your worth does not depend on anyone else's recognition. Your love does not require another's understanding. And your sacred purpose was never meant to be approved by anyone but your own soul. You are like those wild tea plants hidden in misty groves, growing in your own perfect time, kissed by your own inner light, offering your quiet gifts to the world simply because it is your nature to do so. The first test is dissolving now, leaving you lighter, more spacious, and at peace. But the path of a gentle heart does not end there. Because misunderstanding will return, as it always does for those walking a path of authentic love in a world that often fears sincerity. And when it does, you'll remember Wei's humble bow. You'll remember that their confusion is not your problem to solve. Their fear is not your responsibility to carry. Your only task is to keep offering your gifts with a heart as pure and untroubled as mountain tea, whether anyone sees their value or not. And now, quietly, the second spiritual test arrives. It often slips in softly, like morning fog settling into your bones. It's a peculiar ache, the sense of being fundamentally different from those around you. You look at your friends, your family, your co-workers, and you sometimes feel as if you're speaking a different language entirely. They chase after achievements, gather possessions, and compete for attention, while your heart longs for deeper, quieter things. They seem content with surface-level conversations. While you yearn for words that touch the soul, they hurry through life, collecting one experience after another. While you prefer to pause, to sit still and let life reveal its quiet mysteries. This sacred solitude isn't the ordinary loneliness of being excluded or rejected. No, it is the profound, aching solitude that comes from seeing the world through different eyes. You have not been cast out. You have simply grown beyond. A moment ago, we touched on the ache of feeling fundamentally different from those around you, not because you've been rejected, but because you've quietly outgrown the comfortable boundaries that once contained you. And as beautiful as growth is, it often arrives hand in hand with a profound and sometimes devastating sense of loneliness. Let me share with you a story passed down from the misty mountains of Tibet, a story about a young monk named Tenzin, who discovered the difference between being alone and being lonely. For 3 years, Tenzin lived within the bustling walls of a renowned monastery, surrounded by hundreds of fellow monks. His days were filled with the steady rhythm of sacred ceremonies, spirited debates, and communal meals shared in a grand hall alive with laughter, chanting, and conversations about philosophy and the way of life. On the surface, it appeared as though Tenzin was thriving in this vibrant community of spiritual seekers. Yet every night, as he lay down on his simple bed and listened to the gentle snoring of his companions, Tenzin felt a growing emptiness take root inside him, a hollow ache that no amount of company could fill. While the other monks seemed content to follow the prescribed rituals, memorize ancient scriptures, and advance steadily through the traditional ranks of monastic life, Tenzin's heart yearned for something deeper, something real. He began asking difficult questions, the kind of questions that made his teachers shift uncomfortably in their robes. Why do we chant these words if we don't truly feel their meaning? Why do we treat enlightenment like a faraway reward, instead of recognizing it in the breath of this very moment? How can we speak of compassion for all beings while quietly competing with one another for the Master's approval? His sincere, searching inquiries were met with gentle, but dismissive corrections. "You think too much, young Tenzin," the elder monks would murmur. "Follow the path that has been safely walked by thousands before you." But to Tenzin, following felt like sleepwalking. He began to feel like an outsider, even among those who shared his faith and calling. During long group meditations, while others appeared serene and focused, Tenzin wrestled with a restless yearning he could neither name nor suppress. At communal meals, as his fellow monks spoke of monastery politics and daily routines, Tenzin's gaze would drift toward the towering mountains beyond the walls. There, in the vastness, something called to him, a silent invitation to step beyond the familiar. Then, one morning, after a particularly restless and sleepless night, Tenzin made a decision that shocked the entire monastery. He approached his teacher, Master Labang, with a bold request. Tenzin asked for permission to leave the monastery and embark on a solitary retreat deep in the high mountains, not for a few weeks, or even months, but indefinitely. He wished to sit alone in the vastness of the wilderness until he either found what his soul was seeking or understood why he felt so painfully disconnected from the very spiritual community he had once called home. Master Labang, a man of quiet wisdom, studied his young student with knowing, compassionate eyes. "You feel alone, even while surrounded by your brothers," he observed. Tenzin nodded, his voice catching in his throat, tears gathering as he admitted this difficult truth. "And you believe that physical solitude will cure this loneliness?" Again, Tenzin nodded, though this time with less certainty. After a long, quiet pause, Master Lebang finally spoke. "Very well," he said softly, "but I have one condition. You must promise to return after 1 year and tell me what you've discovered about the difference between being alone and being lonely." Grateful that his teacher understood his need for this difficult journey, Tenzin agreed. And so, the young monk climbed higher into the Himalayas, far beyond the reach of human voices, deep into a world where his only companions would be the endless sky, the icy wind, and the steady sound of his own breathing. There, in a small cave perched high above a sea of jagged peaks and mist-filled valleys, Tenzin finally felt a deep, aching relief. No more forced conversations about topics that felt shallow. No more pretending to find meaning in rituals that left his heart cold. No more nodding and smiling at words that no longer spoke to the truth stirring within him. In that silence, something within him began to unravel, and something else, something ancient and wordless, began to awaken. In our last reflection, we followed young Tenzin as he withdrew from the monastery walls and stepped into the vast, unspoken wisdom of the mountains. His heart, long aching for something authentic and unfiltered, finally began to find what it had been seeking. For several months, Tenzin reveled in his solitude. There were no scheduled chants, no forced conversations, no expectations to conform. He meditated for hours without interruption, watching as the first light of dawn painted the snow-covered peaks in shimmering gold. His spirit, once compressed within the tight rituals of monastic life, now stretched and expanded like the endless sky overhead. The suffocating loneliness that had followed him like a shadow within the monastery began to dissolve. It was replaced by something far greater. A profound sense of connection. Not connection to people, or to any particular place, but to something vast, eternal, and unseen. In that stillness, Tenzin came to understand a truth he had not dared to admit before. His loneliness within the monastery had never truly been about the other monks. It was about his own quiet resistance to accepting his unique, unconventional spiritual path. But as winter deepened and the months stretched on, another kind of loneliness began to surface. This one was different, not the sharp, painful disconnection he had once felt, but more like a soft, persistent homesickness, yet it was a longing for a home he had never truly known. On silent nights, sitting beneath skies heavy with ancient stars, Tenzin began to feel the invisible presence of all beings everywhere, each one suffering, searching, and yearning, just as he was. He sensed the monks in his old monastery, still wrestling with their unspoken doubts. He felt people in distant cities aching for the peace he was beginning to find high in the mountains. And with that awareness came an overwhelming realization of how deeply interconnected all life truly is. In those moments, Tenzin experienced something wordless, the aching beauty of belonging to a web of existence so vast. No single life was isolated. Even in his physical solitude, he was never alone. As the year drew to a close, Tenzin understood something he had not expected. The loneliness he carried in the monastery hadn't been cured by removing himself from others. It had been transformed by recognizing his place within the great, intricate tapestry of life. He was not separate from it, but profoundly woven into it in a way that transcended physical nearness or distance. His different way of seeing the world wasn't a burden to hide, or a flaw to overcome. It was a sacred gift, one he was meant to offer. When Tenzin finally returned to the monastery, Master Lebang immediately sensed the change. The young monk's eyes, once clouded with restlessness, now held a steady, calm depth. His movements carried a quiet, unshakable confidence that spoke of inner resolution. "Tell me," the master asked gently, What did you learn about being alone and being lonely? Tenzin smiled, and in that smile was the warmth of someone who had made peace with himself. Master, he began, I learned that loneliness is feeling disconnected from life, while solitude is feeling connected to all of life. In the monastery, I was lonely because I was trying to force myself to be like everyone else. In the mountains, I was alone, but not lonely, because I finally accepted who I am and why I see the world differently. He paused, his voice soft but clear. I discovered that my different perspective isn't a flaw. It's my contribution to the whole. Master Labang nodded slowly, deeply moved by the wisdom in his student's words. And now, he asked. Tenzin's smile widened. Now, I can be with others without losing myself. And I can be alone without feeling abandoned. I understand, Master, that some souls are meant to walk ahead of the crowd, not because they're better, but because someone must scout the path and return to tell the others what they've found. This simple story carries a profound truth about the second spiritual test faced by gentle, pure-hearted souls. Sacred solitude is not a punishment. It is a preparation. Those who feel different, who ask questions others are afraid to ask, who seek depth in a world so often content with surfaces, they are not lost. They are the quiet scouts of human consciousness. They are meant to venture into uncharted territories of the heart and spirit, and then return with wisdom meant to guide those still finding their way. In Buddhist teaching, this is a sacred, necessary path. And so, dear friend, we bring our second chapter to a gentle close. Tonight, through Tenzin's journey, we were reminded that sometimes, the loneliness we carry isn't cured by company, it's healed by rediscovering our place in the great web of life. Sacred solitude isn't a punishment. It's a calling. If this story touched something quiet within your heart, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Daily Dharma Wisdom. Join our peaceful, growing community where ancient teachings meet modern healing, and where your soul will always be welcome. And this, my friend, is only the beginning. In Video 3, we'll uncover the next spiritual test faced by those who walk the path of light, a challenge that hides in plain sight, yet shapes the very course of our destinies. I hope you'll journey with me there. Until then, may peace fill your heart, and may you always remember, even in solitude, you are never truly alone. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.